Now, starting with English, just generally across the board, I guess, what did you do to study for English?
I think English more so than other subjects of the HSC, I sort of think of it as a bit of a game in the sense that you have a syllabus and you have your text and it's all about trying to fit those two together because they're often quite different things to try and sort of see how they sort of mesh. Because you've got the syllabus which sort of talks in these vague abstract terms about, in this really heavy jargon, it's all about techniques, values, context, composer, responder, all that, which I'm sure HSC students soon become fluent in. But it's all about sort of meeting that with the text that you're studying, which are often quite, they're more interesting, more fleshed out, they're full of human characters and stuff, and then I suppose it's just a matter of putting that really heavy sort of dense syllabus into context once you read the text. And I think it's all about, a lot of it's sort of a game in the sense that you've got to follow put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together and fit it all together.
So you sort of, as an overall, I guess, sort of picture, you'd sort of set yourself a bit of a challenge, which was, how can I get this, I guess to an extent, fairly artificially created syllabus, and actually get it to mesh with the text that that you're reading about, which had real life characters. Now, I guess to flesh that out a little bit more, how did you do that? I know that's a big question for yourself.
I suppose it's always a matter of you go to the text first, because I think that's really important that you learn to appreciate the text first, because it's all about, English, once you get to the later stages when you're sort of memorising essays and you memorise certain quotes and stuff and certain techniques, and it sort of becomes a meta text to the actual text. It's all about these certain quotes that you'll remember years from now about this text that sort of encapsulate it for you. So at first it's sort of this really broad general reading when you sort of appreciate it more in a way because you haven't put it into this context of the HSC course. I think it's really important that students do that so they can appreciate it first as a text of its own right, not just as a text that I'm reading for the HSC. So I think that's what I did first, is that I read all my HSC English texts and appreciated them, and then you read the syllabus and then you try and follow that process, I suppose. But in terms of how I did that methodically, a lot of it can be fairly haphazard in a way. It depends on your individual circumstance, how you're going in class and how your peers are going as well. But it's a matter of decoding that syllabus in a lot of ways. For example, I'm trying to think of belonging, and there's all this particular jargon in the belonging syllabus about, it's all about perspectives on belonging, and it's changing your perspectives, and belonging is a perception, so perceptions of belonging change over time, and it's not just a fixed concept, it's one that is dynamic, and all of those type of words. So it's a matter of reading the syllabus after you read the text, I suppose.
So to just summarise that in 2 quick steps. Number one, you're strongly suggesting, I get the impression, that students should read the text. They shouldn't skip that step and sort of deal with summaries and synopsises and that sort of stuff.
But more importantly, read it as a text in its own right.
So not read it for the first time already with the syllabus in mind. So just read it, enjoy it, explore it.
Sure.
Then go to the syllabus. Deconstruct, I guess, the syllabus, understand, some of those jargon and terms. And then take them and try to apply it. So I guess, does that mean rereading it a second time with this understanding of belonging, for example, in your mind?
For sure,
And then once you do that, so you've got belonging in your head, you're reading about the fact that belonging as perspective changes and all that other stuff. What do you do then as you read it? Do you take notes? Do you scroll in the margins? What's the next step for a student?
I remember making lots of notes in the margins, although I wouldn't want my head of English to know that at school. Lots of pencil notes in the margins, pretty much I could have as many words on the page that I'd written myself as there were when it was printed. But I don't know whether that's necessarily the best way to do it. I'd say a more methodical way would be to write it down as you go on a separate piece of paper, so it's more clear and so it's in more like the order of the text, and it's more able to read at a later date. Because if you've just got all these lines and stuff going all over the place, and you underline text, and you sort of like got an arrow up there, and then you've got like an arrow down there, and like trying to figure it out is really difficult. So I'd say, yeah, write it down on a separate piece of paper and make your notes as you go. But then again, you've got to like make sense of those notes as a whole. So it's, again, this process of like decoding in a way is sort of like wanky postmodernist as that sounds. Like, again, you've got to sort of like put those notes into context. So you've got to like read through them, and then again, you've got to like flesh it out based on like what you know about the text. So if you've just got this like scrawled note to yourself, like P64 metaphor of the tree or something, you've got to like put that back into context and think like, okay, so what do I know about that particular tree in the context of the novel, like Romulus My Father? Like, what does that mean? Yeah, within the text more broadly. So again, it's all about having this like more well-rounded knowledge rather than just this really like, because I think a lot of students do get this really like reductive knowledge of text where they just sort of have read the study guide as opposed to the text itself, and they're like, okay, there's the simile, and then there's this metaphor, and then like, oh, there's the personification of this such and such, whereas they don't actually understand how it all fits together, and that's what's really important.
So in other words, what a lot of students are doing is, you know, I guess getting all the techniques and the examples that they're needing to insert in the essay, but without understanding the bigger picture, the context, which really I think is probably what gives the essay the depth that they'll eventually need. Yeah. Okay. And so you didn't create methodical notes, but you're suggesting from your own experience that students should, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, eventually I got around to it, but it was just more difficult because I hadn't in the first place.